Good morning. Happy Monday. I hope you had a fantastic weekend and are ready to face this week, feeling refreshed and ready to go. We're going to continue our series, Letting God Be God, learning from some of the awesome miracles that God performed in the Old and the New Testament, to just let us to stand in awe of God and to realize that He moves in ways that are way beyond what we can even fathom or comprehend, and just letting Him be God and trusting Him to take care of things the way He knows how, because they're so much more awesome than we can even comprehend. And today we're going to start with the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Their story actually starts in Daniel 1, and we're just going to touch on this. I just want to give you a little background on them. The chief eunuch was ordered by King Nebuchadnezzar to bring some of the people of Israel, both the royal family and nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge and understanding and learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, to teach them literature and language of Chaldeans. So he was going to bring these youths into his palace, and they were going to be assigned a portion of the king's food daily, and he was going to also give them the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and then at the end of the time they were to stand before the king, so he could choose the cream of the crop. So if you forward to verse 8 in chapter 1, it says, "But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food." So obviously Daniel was with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And actually Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that wasn't their original name. The eunuch had changed their names. It was, and you'll see a little bit further, that it was Hananiah, he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. So we'll pick up in verse 8 again. "But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food, or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief eunuchs." See, God's kind of making a way right there, like, okay, he's honoring what Daniel is trying to do, and he gave him favor. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, "I fear my lord, the king, who assigned you food and your drink. Why should he see that you are in worse condition than the youths of your own age, so you would endanger my head with the king?" Then Daniel said to the steward, of whom the chief of eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink, and let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, to deal with your servants according to what you see." So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter than in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and their wine, and the wine they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. So God showed himself faithful. And I love the commentary on this. I use this is the ESV Study Bible, and it said, "Daniel and his friends avoided the luxurious diet at the king's table as a way of protecting themselves from being ensnared by temptations of the Babylonian culture." And I go down a little bit, and it says, "With this restricted diet, they continually reminded themselves in this time of testing that they were people of God in a foreign land, and they were dependent on their food indeed their very lives, upon God, their creator, not King Nebuchadnezzar." So I don't know exactly why the food was considered to be defiling to themselves. There's a few theories out there, but they resolved, that they were not going to kind of go to the same ways. They weren't going to jump right in and consider them, that they were going to be set apart, that they were going to depend on God, that they were going to deny himself this, in order that they realized that they were dependent on God, because they used the vegetables and the grains. And so I really appreciate their resolve. And right there they laid down a foundation for when they got pulled into the Babylonian palace, that, okay, we're still God's children, and we're gonna make this boundary right here, and we're not gonna defile ourselves. And they stood together. Now we're going to go fast forward to chapter 3, and it says, "King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits, and its breadth 6 cubits. He set it up on a plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent together the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image of that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald proclaimed aloud, You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image of King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, and the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples and nations and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Well, we're going to fast forward to verse 12. It says, there were certain Jews, excuse me, the worship, okay, excuse me, we'll go to verse 11. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast in burning fires. There were certain Jews whom you have appointed. Now the Chaldeans are pretty much ratting out Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so they're telling him that we're going to pick it up in verse 12. There were certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of provinces of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Then King Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought forth these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image I have set up? Now if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace, and who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to King, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated, and he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fire furnace. Then these men were bound, their cloaks and tunics, their hats, their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Because of the king's order was urgent, the furnace overheated. The flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the fiery furnace. You know, they took their stand, and they're just, you know what, we're not here to serve you, King Nebuchadnezzar, or worship your gods, but we're here to represent our God, and that's the only God we're going to worship. And they had that resolve, and they already had that made up in their mind that was how they were going to live their life. So verse 24. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered the king and said, True, O king. He answered and said, But if I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, but the appearance of the 4th is like the Son of God's. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads were not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of the fire had come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and set aside the king's command, yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree, any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. The God promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. And I just think, how awesome. I mean, how awesome to have that resolve and to have that faith in God. You know what? Doesn't matter what happens to me right now. They're putting me in a fiery furnace. God can deliver me, yes. And if he doesn't, I just want you to know, King, that I'm not going to bow down to your God. And what a testimony when God delivered them. And King Nebuchadnezzar decrees any people speaks anything against their God, because he is the God who is able to deliver. He's the only God. for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. And I just want you to take the awesomeness of that and realize, because of their faithfulness and their obedience and their trust in God, their whole nation was changed, right? God was all of a sudden put in his rightful position because they were willing to have that resolve that they will bow to no other God, and they'd made that determination in their life. And I just hope this is an encouragement to you to keep walking the walk of faith and keep following God and keep trusting God, because you know what? You don't know how he's going to move. And I hope today you just experience some of that awe, and you just revel in who God is and his awesomeness. Have a blessed day and keep fighting the good fight. We'll see you Thursday, Lord willing.